The sprinkler.
Hi, Jurgen.
Hey, Eric, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Yourself?
I'm pretty good as well. I'm a little bit tired. I had a webinar of 2 hours almost just a few hours ago. So that's not the easiest thing to do. Talk for 2 hours for me. I like talking, but over a Zoom call is quite strenuous.
Was it through Zoom or some other platform?
No, it was Zoom. So 1 hour and 15 minutes talk, and then there was almost 45 minutes of Q&As, which is me giving answers all the time. But it was good. Well, I loved the session. But I am now a bit glad that it's the end of the day, at least where I am.
Yeah, me, it's more or less the beginning of the day. Webinars are a little more fun when you have a lot of time for Q&A. I went to a webinar not long ago with Lisa Atkins. And I said, my mind was like, poor Lisa. It's going to be talking for an hour and a half and no feedback because it's all online. But no, the whole time was Q&A. People asking questions on Zoom, and she was offering some insight, and it was a lot more dynamic and fun than I expected. So maybe that's a format that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, well, I know Lisa. She's good at that kind of stuff for sure. And but I like doing the things that I am good at, which is making slides and telling stories and cracking a joke every now and then. We to each their own, I suppose. That works for me.
I know you do like to start your conferences with a true story of what happened at the airport or what happened with your daughter.
Yes. Yeah. I always start with an anecdote.
You're quite prolific on Twitter, so we know everything that's happening with you.
There's very little that I keep to myself, for sure.
Including the what's it called, the first class or privilege lineup at the airport.
Oh God, that was last week in Paris. Yes, where the priority queue took longer than the than the non-priority queue. That was a weird interpretation of priority.
Product to experience.
Yeah.
The product that was being sold was priority. Yes, the experience was, I'm waiting longer than everybody else. What's going on here?
Me as a diva being very annoyed there in the priority queue. Yeah.
You consider yourself a diva?
I certainly do. Yes.
You're quite the humble diva.
That's a good summary. Yeah, I'm a humble diva. I keep that.
Because you, if you don't mind me mentioning it, but I positive you don't mind, because it's a fact of life. It's actually a necessity, I think. You had a startup.
Yeah.
You try to gamify some of the tools. I think it's some of the tools from Manager 3.0, Kudos and whatnot.
Among others, yeah.
Yeah. And didn't quite work out.
Not yet, correct. I say
I like that.
I say it hasn't failed yet, because you only fail when you give up, and I'm not giving up. I'm actually relaunching in a week or two.
Oh, congratulations!
With different approach, same vision, but different strategy. That's the very definition of a pivot in Lean Startup language.
Yeah.
So it took me a while. I must say, Corona didn't make it any easier. The COVID crisis, but it's the vision is there still, and the motivation. So I'm gonna try again.
What would you change?
What I changed? Well, God, there's so many things that I learned from my previous experiment. One thing that I learned was that it was too far away of what people were used to.
Okay.
And in hindsight, everything is obvious. We know that as change agents and coaches and consultants, we often say start where people are. That's also what they say in the Kanban community. Just start where people are and then make small changes.
Yeah.
But then as a startup founder, you often fall in love with your own grand visions, and you paint a picture of somewhere completely different. And you place a flag there, and then tell people, come over here. It's so awesome over here, far away from where you are.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work like that. So I now have a somewhat different approach that is closer to what people are already familiar with, and then making smaller steps in a new direction.
And maybe not taking the word of your personas saying, yes, if you do that, for sure, it'll be amazing. We'll use it.
Oh God, yes. I had so many false positives.
False positive.
Yeah, that's super annoying. I warn people because of my own experience. Don't listen to customers too much because they keep saying, "Oh yeah, that sounds awesome," and sign me up, and I'm in. And then once you start offering a product and ask for money, sorry, I'm too busy. I have other things to do, and I built exactly what you told me to.
And then, why aren't you paying my license?
Yeah, and now why aren't you using it? So
why any explanation, any hypotheses, and confirm?
Yeah, my own fault, of course, because
there you go, humble diva. There you go.
The humble diva, that's me. It's listening to customers instead of observing them. And that's what design thinking is all about. You have to understand the real needs of your customers, your intended users, and understand the job to be done, and not just do what they ask. I often give, as a funny example, you mentioned before, I like coffee, so I give plenty of coffee examples. When you ask me what I want, then I always say, I want just the best coffee in town. Where is it? That's an obvious answer. But when you look at what I'm doing, then you might see me sneaking into a Starbucks. Well, that's not really the best coffee in town, I often say. That's like the bottom end of the acceptable spectrum. Mm-hmm. But that is because at the high-end barista coffee bar next door, they don't allow me to sit for 2 hours with my notebook open and do some work. Mm-hmm. And that's essential for me because I'm a traveler. I need to enjoy my coffee while working for a while. And that is exactly what Starbucks understood as the job to be done. They call that the third place between office and home. They actually have a term for it. And that's the job to be done for Starbucks. They define that well. And for other coffee bars, they have a different job to be done. Maybe they just want to pour the best coffee in town, but it's not meant to sit there and work for 2 hours. That's not what they are about. No. So they solve a different problem. And so when you just listen to me, you would give me the best coffee, but then I say, well, where can I sit? I can't sit here. This is useless.
There's probably no Wi-Fi anyway, so.
Yeah, and your Wi-Fi doesn't even work.
So also Starbucks is also very familiar. If you're traveling and you for an hour, you just want a more familiar environment. So you'll go to McDonald's for lunch and then maybe have coffee after at Starbucks just to position your brain cells a little bit for 2 hours.
That's a point. For some people, they want that familiarity. They want to know what they get when they order a latte macchiato or whatever. That's part of the fun for me, that every coffee bar is slightly different. And sometimes they confuse the terms and then I get sort of cranky.
Cafe latte versus macchiato.
Yes, that's the diva part in me, Eric. Then they offered me the wrong drink. I asked for a cafe latte. They gave me a latte macchiato. You don't even know the difference? My God. You call yourself a barista?
What's that comparison you make? It's like comparing a barista to a plumber.
Yes. So that's design thinking. That's understanding the job to be done, and that's the mistake. Well, one of the many. That's the humble part again. One of the many mistakes I made is just doing what people ask. And trying to do what I painted as a vision, but not really understanding the need that had to be addressed, the problem that needed to be solved. So back to square one, basically.
Yeah, for sure. But I've been reading these various models, whether it be yours or Lean Startup, design thinking, design sprints, which I love all. I've had guests over talking about design sprints and with sprint masters. I never heard that term before.
Oh, okay. Wow. Never heard of sprint master before.
No, I know now because I had guests explain it to me. But this is one thing I love about this podcast. I learn a lot of stuff. It's just crazy. You just never stop learning. That said, those various models. Listen, I'm wondering how we factor in explicitly the environment, the sudden change of context. I asked myself that question because if you had asked me in March 2020, what do you think about a tool to collaborate online? Leave me alone. I just need a people, a wall, and Post-its. I don't need anything else. Don't complicate my life with these things. Zoom. I knew Zoom a little bit because Ellen Grove, she likes to use Zoom and stuff. Sure, whatever. But today Zoom and breakout rooms. I didn't know what breakout rooms were. I didn't know I needed breakout rooms. I love breakout rooms now. They're just fantastic. I love Mural, all these tools to collaborate online. My because of COVID and confinement, my mindset completely changed 180 degrees. Do these models take that into account?
Yes, if you understand them as being iterative.
Okay. Yeah.
That is one of my pet peeves with the traditional design thinking model, not design thinking itself, which I love. I love the books and everything. But the pictures, as they are often drawn, are drawn sequentially with empathize, define, ideate, etc. 5
prototype,
steps.
test.
Yeah, that's it. And I always say that's such a pity because it is meant to be iterative. You're meant to go back all the time. If you keep empathizing, you would understand a change in context and then the change in need of a person. Like indeed, as you said, COVID had quite an impact on people and their work lives, of course. And I talked about it with my partner. And as an example, some people, they when they work from home, they suddenly have to work from a situation that was not meant to be used as an office for 8 hours. So they sit at kitchen tables for hours on end, and then they have pain in their backs and their necks, and they need physiotherapy and everything. But these are real problems that need to be addressed. So that you only find that out when you have an iterative approach to design thinking and lean startup, going back to the beginning all the time and keep empathizing and figuring out it has the need changed perhaps. Is there now a different problem to be solved? Or has one priority gone up and another one gone down because of the change in environment? That's why I offer my own Innovation Vortex as a different picture for design thinking and lean startup, which is iterative. Because I don't really like how the design thinking pictures are usually drawn. They're too waterfallish, and then they are easily misinterpreted.
So the spirit of design thinking is iterative, as lean startup also. But sure. the perception of it is that it is sequential, if not a little maybe too ordered. Nice clean circle.
Yeah.
So you offer the term vortex or innovation vortex.
Yes.
A little more. Can you offer a little more insight?
So I have two issues with those pictures. One is that they come across as linear, as sequential. I debated another one recently, again last week, from Gartner, where design thinking was positioned before lean startup, and then after lean startup came Agile. And oh my God, there you go again. You put things in the sequence. I mean, when does it ever stop? And the design thinking itself was shown as a sequence of a couple of steps. And then after design thinking came lean startup. No, everything needs to be iterative. That should be the default, that everything is iterative. So that's my first pet peeve. And then the second, indeed, as you said, it is not like a neat step-by-step process of discrete chunks of work. It's a mess.
It's chaos.
Any innovator, any change agent knows that it is non-linear dynamic process. So as I always say, on Monday morning, you could be empathizing with users. On Monday afternoon, you could be looking at the latest test results of the previous prototype. And on Tuesday morning, you could be doing a retrospective. And on Tuesday afternoon, you could be ideating for new problems. You're going back and forth across the entire vortex. But it doesn't matter because the vortex is like a whirlwind. That's why I like the word vortex. It's messy. Everything is mixed together. As long as you touch upon all the parts, frequently, then you should be good.
Yeah. How could that affect focusing on something? It just seems that I enjoy the imagery of vortex, and I do believe that you have to break stuff to innovate, and so and a chaos and basically a hurricane will do that. On the opposite side, it just seems that we're losing focus on completing something or getting to a right level of something before moving on to something else. Basically, like a squirrel kind of a situation. Could that be a risk with a vortex approach?
Maybe. I haven't noticed it myself.
No? Okay.
I just think that these different streams of the vortex, as I call them, they just can be decoupled. Okay. Maybe empathizing with customers needs to be done only once per week with customer interviews and observations and etc. And but continuous deployments and releases that could be done every day. Mm-hmm. That's a different cadence. Mm-hmm. While ideating for new features, maybe you can do that once every 2 weeks, and then you have enough to go by for the next few weeks. So why would it be 5, 6, or 7 discrete steps where every step is in lock sync with the others? That makes no sense to me. There are different kinds of work. As long as you ping pong back and forth between all those different kinds of work, you're good. And of course, you need to take into account that you go back often enough to each step. That's discipline, experience. I don't know. I personally have no problems with it, but maybe others will. I don't.
Get a sprint master and you'll be fine.
Get a sprint master for sure.
And it goes without saying, you're probably empathizing while you're prototyping.
Yeah.
Maybe the five steps of design thinking are done always together. You're empathizing and defining an ideation and then prototyping and testing. Well, maybe not testing.
Well, if you scratch your own itch, as some suggest, you solve a problem you have yourself that you recognize other people have too. Mm-hmm. Then it comes very close to being just one step. Yeah, because you're empathizing with yourself and then ideating at the same time and things like that. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's easier or harder, empathizing with yourself, but that's a whole other subject. We can talk about coaching some other time. So I guess this was the motivation to creating your book, Startup, Scaleup, Screwup.
The motivation is that the publisher asked, which is a compliment for authors. When a publisher comes and says, "Could you please write a new book?" Please. That means that probably they earned enough money on the previous one. So,
if they pay your royalties.
But yes, well, I'm glad they do. I in the beginning I said no. Actually, I have no time. I'm trying to create a new product here. I'm a startup founder now. And they said, please, pretty please. And then I thought, well, I know other founders who raise families or have kids. I don't raise any kids. So what excuse do I have for not writing a book, which is like kids to me? And then I thought, and then it became even more appealing. I thought, well, maybe I just write about what I'm doing as a startup founder, just put in some personal experience, and there's no better way to learn something than to write about it. Mm-hmm. Is something that I have noticed. It happens often enough that I start a blog post not having any idea in which direction it is going, but then at the end of the blog post I think, so this is how I think about the topic. Because after writing, I suddenly learned something. And the book is the expanded version of that. So I said to the publisher, sure, I will write a book if it can be about startups. And scaling up is all the rage nowadays. So let's do a startup scale up. And then Screwup came to mind immediately. Talking about failure sounded like a fun title. So that's how it came about.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You could have just have assembled all your blog posts and made a book with that.
I did that with Management 2.0, basically.
Oh yeah, you did.
Well, not entirely true. It was 40%. I think about 40% was already published as a blog post.
Oh, really? Yeah. And if I remember well, your blog post was very well rated. If it's not still well rated today, I don't know. But back then,
the dynamics of blogging is very different now because everyone is social media nowadays, and people are not really reading blogs in that sense as they did in the past. So I haven't focused that much on my blog, to be honest.
So this was your motivation to writing your book, and you create a 10 stage. I don't want to call it a process. A 10-stage vortex.
No, it's a lifecycle model is what you refer to.
Referring to the life. Okay.
Yeah. Because the vortex is the iterative thing. It's design thinking, lean startup, agile, lean, all wrapped together in one iterative thing. So that's the message of thou shalt iterate.
It is critical.
The first or second or third law of agile, or whatever you could say.
And we're still not there today.
Yeah,
we're still in. We're like I wrote. Wait a second. Like I wrote right here. We're just starting to move from project to product, just slowly. People are getting an understanding of what the difference is, and then the other day you sent me a message saying, let's talk about product to experience. I'm like, oh God,
right.
We're just catching our breath, getting people to think about product.
Okay, well, I'd love to talk about that as well. But what you're referring to, the 10 life cycle stages, that's something that I learned while writing the book, actually, because I talked with startup founders across Europe and scale-ups, such as the people at Spotify and Booking.com and TransferWise and the super interesting companies we have here in Europe. And they think in terms of life cycle stages, problem solution fit, product market fit, the scaling stage, etc. So I looked into the maturity stages of a product, and I found that practices depend on the maturity of a product or business model. And it makes total sense when you compare it to human beings. I offered the analogy of my family. When I was young, I was 10 years old. I could come home anytime I wanted. But my brother, who was 7 years old, had to be home at 6 o'clock.
Oh, that's
and
not
he
fair.
Said that was not fair. That was not fair, he said to my mom. And my mother said, well, Jurgen is 3 years older. You'll get the same rules when you grow up. So different amount of pocket money and everything.
Yeah.
That's normal. Any parent understands that the rules change over time. And at one point, you're going to be treated as an adult. So you'll have to do the things the adults do. You have some new rights, but also some new rules and challenges. It's the same for products. Makes no difference.
What would be the first rule?
For humans or for products?
Well, let's go with products. Let's say I don't know. Yeah, we could talk about the context of a startup or maybe a large organization that want to innovate. They tried the suggestion box, that didn't work out. They tried hackathons, that didn't work out. They tried the innovation committee, that didn't work out. Damn, what do we do? what do we do when we're 1 year old and we want to launch something innovative?
Well, I think, first of all, it begins with understanding that there are different risks in the different parts of a product's life. In the beginning, it is making the wrong thing, making something that nobody wants to use. As I experienced myself, people can be very enthusiastic, but if they're not using the product, you fail. Yeah. Because you need traction, you need retention. The golden words for any startup, traction and retention and customer lifetime value, things like that. So making something that people want to use, do the right thing, basically, in the early stages. And then in the middle stages, the teenage years, basically, when the product is growing up, it is surviving the scaling part, basically. That is switching from exploration to exploitation of the business model. Now you know something that works. Now you need to do it efficiently and effectively and fast and cheap, because there will be competitors who look at what you're doing and say, oh, we can do that too, but only with cheaper people in India or whatever. And then you have a problem.
Yeah.
So you need to figure out how can we survive the scaling years and make this a profitable thing and get market share quickly. And then the last part is exploitation. How do we stay profitable? That's then the new risk. How do we not get out of date, basically, as a product? So that gives you a different risk profile. It also means that there will be different practices applicable in those different life cycle stages. I give it as an example OKRs, which is a very popular goal-setting framework. I'm sure many of your listeners know it well. Among startups, I never hear anyone talking about OKRs. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. They talk about the North Star metric. Much simpler. It's a very simple paradigm, the one metric that rules them all, the one thing to focus on. So to give the startup team laser focus. It doesn't scale, but it is not intended to scale. It is for one team, the North Star metric. So it works fine in those early stages where you have a startup team trying to figure out what is successful among our customers.
Focus on doing the right thing, basically.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing the thing right.
Yes, doing the right thing. So sometimes the North Star metric can be like customer engagement metrics, like the number of minutes of music that the person listens to Spotify or whatever. That's those kinds of metrics. Other times it can be something investor facing, like the size of the network or the number of users. Because if you need money to invest in the product, you need to convince investors that the value of your network is growing. So that could be a North Star metric in the beginning. But when the product grows up, you figured it all out, your business model seems to work, you're going to change from being a kid to being an adult with your business model. That means you're going to have to play by the rules of the adults, and the adults are doing OKRs because that's a perfect goal-setting paradigm for the adult units that already know what they're doing. They've already figured out their business models. So that's one example of how the practices change. And I keep telling coaches and consultants that they should be more aware of where products and business units are in their life cycle stages. Because if they just go into an organization and say, we're going to introduce SAFe or whatever kind of framework is fashionable, you're not taking into account that it's a family. You don't give the entire family the same workout exercises, because some family members are 80 and others are 3, and the exercises make no sense to those family members. They need different approaches, so it has to be more customized for the stages, the life cycle stages that the units are in. So that is one insight I have in my book. I think that's a contribution to the Agile community, something we have not really considered before. Make it dependent or basically reduce the size of your organizational transformation to the business unit. Focus on a business unit, and different units could have a different approach because they might be in different stages.
Simplicity, the art of maximizing what not to do, something like that. Yeah. Am I saying this right? Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
My memory is getting old. Like when you're over 50, it goes to hell.
I know.
What do you think Spotify? I mean, Spotify, they're streaming music. I'm sorry, but there's nothing much original there. But man, I only use Spotify, and they've taken over everything. There's even a Spotify model, whatever that means. And what did they do at maybe the initiation stage of their product?
Well, Spotify is in what I call stage 7. They have become profitable
today.
The 7th of 10 stages is Spotify has reported profits for a couple of quarters.
Okay.
Tesla, same, also profitable now, apparently, according to some reports. Some didn't think they would ever get there. But they pulled it off.
$500 billion value.
Yeah, which is amazing. I wish I had invested in that.
Same here, yeah.
So they are in stage 7. And of course, once you're in stage 7, you're going to think about, okay, how are we going to diversify? And then you're going to stage 8, basically, which is expansion, different territories, different product lines. Spotify has gone into podcasts. It's a nice example.
That's right. Yeah, they bought Anchor.
Yeah, they buy other companies, they buy startups, they run experiments with own business units that basically themselves start in stage 1 again with an idea, and then expedition, exploring things, problem solution fit, product market fit, because Spotify then as a company becomes a family of business models and products and services. Well, every startup starts being one business model, but when they're successful as a company, they will have to expand the family with young ones that start at the very beginning, and that's how that innovation funnel, as it is called, needs to be managed.
I would have loved to have been in that initial conversation in a coffee shop with the folks who created Spotify. So
that would have been interesting.
What did you talk about? I'm really bad in predicting the future. I mean, I remember when somebody presented Twitter to me when it first came out. I was like,
that makes no sense.
What's the point? I could code that. I could code that in 5 minutes. Stop bothering me with that. And today, Twitter is Twitter. We all know about it. But same thing with Spotify. Somebody sat down with me in a coffee shop and said, "Hey, I want to start a music streaming website or application." No, there's way too much competition. I mean, why would you? I would love to be in a fly on the wall and listen to what was that vision that do you know the name of the founder? I don't know the name of the founder.
Daniel Ek.
What did he say that to inspire people around them and say, yes, we will create a product to stream music? This is fantastic.
I think it's different. With Twitter, it was indeed a vision that everyone said, well, that doesn't make any sense. Just 140 characters. That's much less than my blog posts.
There you go.
And the same with Airbnb, where people said, indeed, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I want to invite people to my house, complete strangers? I'm not nuts. Yeah. Spotify made a lot of sense. It was more a technical challenge. The size of the library, the instant gratification of clicking a button and the music plays immediately. Yes. They had far more challenges in the technical area and the economics of making it work. But I think from a functional perspective, it was obvious that we had to go in this direction, which is what nobody had pulled it off well enough yet.
Yeah, it's true. I guess what was more popular at that moment was selling online music.
And MP3 downloading MP3. iTunes preceded Spotify by a couple of years, and that was about downloading MP3. So that was still the mindset. You pay for a number of bits and bytes, and then you download them, and then they are yours. Mm-hmm. And we had to give up that notion that we own a couple of bytes, which is odd in hindsight.
You still can't hold on to the vinyl record and play with it while you're listening to the music, but still, it's still good. It's still good.
Yeah, and the funny thing, yesterday I went through old CDs. I've been working on my bookcase just behind me. There were just old CDs up there. That I replaced into new boxes, and I came across some artists. Oh wow! I haven't heard these in years. Let's look them up on Spotify. They're there. Yes, awesome. And then I favorited them.
There you go.
So that I rediscovered my favorites from the 80s and the 90s, basically.
You know what I love on Spotify are the covers.
The covers. Oh,
yeah, I hate them. One of my favorite bands is like New Order, for instance. And there's so many covers of New Order songs. Like Ceremony is covered by a million times by a million people. So I sometimes I just play for an hour just various versions of the song Ceremony by New Order. It's like a different song. They're very techno version, very acoustic versions. It's a lot. That's one of the reasons why I like Spotify. There's so much content. It's fantastic for that, and it allows for very obscure versions of your favorite songs that you're used to hearing in one tempo, and then hearing in something completely different. Basically, it becomes a new song. So that's what I like about Spotify.
For what I like is the endless browsing and going from one song to the other, and then at the end of a playlist it keeps playing, but it just finds suggestions, and then you suddenly hear a song, but my God, I haven't heard this one in 20 years. How do they know that I might like this? That's experience. You refer to product to experience. Coming back to that topic, because it's one of my favorites nowadays. Is it's that you're offering more than just a product to people. Where, as I say, we're creating happiness molecules. It's about serotonin and those hormone molecules that we like to create as companies, instead of just offering a product and then that's that. I think we made one good change going from project to product, saying we should stop handing stuff over to somebody else, from a project manager to a product manager. I recently said that a project manager is basically a product manager who knows that it's somebody else's problem after a certain date, because there's an end date for a project, and then you hand it over to another. And as a product manager, we stay responsible until the end of life cycle of the product. But there's still a handover. To give you an example, I know some awesome products that I use, but I'm angry with the companies because it's just a pain to get the invoice. That you have to log into some obscure menu and drill down 5 levels, and then you have to download it. And why not send it to me by email so I can forward it immediately with a rule in Gmail to my accounting system? And the product creators don't see this as part of the product, but it is part of the experience that the company gives me. So, and there are plenty of examples of that. Also the opposite, where the product is maybe mediocre, but the company compensates with an experience that is awesome.
We're entering the realm of CX at this point.
Yeah, it's experience in a more holistic way, and sometimes companies pleasantly surprise me. Like I remember, I think it was with Slack, that I posted a bug. I don't remember what it was on their system, and a couple of months later, I got a notification that the bug was fixed. And I was like, "Whoa! You're telling me?"
Okay, that's good.
I completely forgot about it, and that was a positive experience for me. It was not in the product itself, but it was everything around it. So
it reminds me of Apple. I bought one of the first iPods. And at some point, they sent me a new iPod. They said, please use this iPod and send back the original one because there's a problem with the battery. I didn't ask for anything.
Wow. Nice.
Look at that. I have a new. The first one was a bit kind of big, and the new one was tiny. And I was, okay, Apple, yes, I will buy your products from now on.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a nice touch.
Yeah.
So if you just offer a product and you leave customer service and finance and marketing and everything to other departments, then there is still a handover. From the customer's perspective, there's still a handover, because there are parts of the company that are not collaborating, and you suffer one part while maybe enjoying the another part. And that's why I think we have to move. We think more in terms of the experience, which is also what service design and design thinking are about. That's what the journey mapping practice is for. The journey mapping is specifically intended to find the gaps between departments, because you describe the journey that a customer has from their perspective, from the first moment they encounter your brand, the existence of your product, to the moment they are a happy customer for life. various things happen with various touch points, various interactions with different departments of your company. And that should be an enjoyable journey. But for many companies, it isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there's so many examples to choose from these days, but the one that's really out there is Nokia. And when the CEO said, "We did nothing wrong."
Okay.
Well, where did they go wrong? They didn't. Gotta wonder. Wonder if it's just if it's really wrong decisions, or if it's just the sex appeal of Apple at that point, or is it? Well, I try to wonder in what part of the stages of your of startup that they might have gone wrong. It's obviously not initiation stage, because that was done a long time ago.
I think to use my models, I think they went wrong in terms of not allowing the kids to be kids in their exploration stages. You need to have startups be startups and iterate and innovate fast.
Yeah.
But if you try to innovate from within stage 7 and 8, that's big business units that are already making money, and you apply the same procedures and same policies to everyone, you're never going to get innovation. So, and one example, it makes total sense that as an employee of a profitable business unit, I need to fill out some kind of expense form or whatever when I want to go to a conference, because, okay, that might be a few €100 or dollars. We cannot just let anyone go whenever they want. There's a budget, and that needs to be managed, obviously, because the main concern is profitability, as I said. So you need to manage for profitability. You have to have policies for expenses. It's obvious. But that doesn't make sense for a startup. What investors do, they give the startup a budget for everything, whatever they want. So, well, here's $100,000 or whatever. Yeah. And with this money, you now have the responsibility of finding product market fit. And don't come to me asking for permission to go to a conference.
It's your budget.
I don't care. You have a budget. Just it goes out of your budget. Yeah. That's how startups are managed. And he said, well, your own salary comes out of the same budget. I'm not going to negotiate your compensation with you. So that's the way that startup units also in larger companies need to be managed. You give them a budget. So you are now an internal startup. Your own compensation comes out of the same budget. Good luck. And if you want to go to a conference, well, I don't care, whatever. Suddenly people will get very creative when they want to get into a conference. They will offer themselves as volunteers, for example, or they will send a speaking proposal so that they can get in for free. That's the spirit of an entrepreneur, of a startup founder. The employees who work for a profitable business unit wouldn't do that. They would just pay the entrance fee. So I think Nokia was probably mismanaged in that sense, that they did not have real innovation as they would have in a real startup ecosystem. Apple apparently did have such an approach, and Google as well with Android.
Yeah, and Apple also had products that died. The iPod, for one. It's always a sign when they start producing things in different colors. It's a precursor to the dying product. I'm referring to your conference that you gave in Paris.
Midlife crisis.
Midlife crisis. Exactly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Nokia did the same thing. I can't remember if they start offering their phones in multicolors just to generate some interest. Yes, it's there's a lot of things to take into account. But actually, I have 10 stages. I'll write down the stages in the description below. Because you're referring to the stage numbers, and if people want to follow can look at that.
Sure. Yes, we could go through them, but it's easier for people to go to a link. The business lifecycle stages, they're on my website.
Absolutely.
So send me an email if you can find it.
It's very interesting. You did address the experience part. We talked to a UX specialist for a while, a few months or weeks back, and he very cleared things up in regards to UX, which is very product related, versus CX is the product within the whole experience, arriving to the airport, and basically the screen saying, "Hi, Eric, please go this way to the desk."
Right.
It's a little weird in one way, but it's pretty cool in another way. I don't mind Big Brother personally, but anyways, that's another story. And then this is the whole complete customer experience that includes some software somewhere in the middle,
right?
In regards to the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's interesting. So, but that's customer experience versus user experience. But from other perspectives, these could be different stakeholders, because there are quite a few products and services where the customer is not the user. Someone pays and someone else uses.
Absolutely.
And both have an experience.
True.
So that's another way of seeing it. Both experiences need to be great, both for the person who's paying for everything and for the one who's using. Like with conferences, for example, big companies, they pay for their employees to go to a conference, and the procurement pays, and the team member goes as a user, and both need to have a good experience with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And something not to neglect that you mentioned earlier, the emotion. We apparently might go through a logical process in studying a product, but in the end, the final decision is clinched by the emotion it generates, apparently.
Yes. Indeed. And that's why I mentioned happiness. Ultimately, people want not products. They don't want bits and bytes and atoms. They want experiences, because experiences contribute to their happiness, and the products are a part of making that happen.
Can we conclude with an Agile question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What is your perception of what's going to happen in the next 20 years? We'll probably be retired, both of us, or maybe not.
If I'm still alive, I will not be retired. I will never retire. I will just do things that are less strenuous.
I'm working a lot with Adobe Premiere these days. I'm editing videos. I'm saying, this is going to be my job when I retire. I'm going to edit videos. I'm going to make promotional videos for people, just
for example.
But what do you think? Is Agile still going to be there? Like Lean's been there for a long time.
Yes and no. I don't think there's a need to call things Agile anymore in the future. That's just the way we do things. It makes perfect sense to have iterative approaches and fast feedback cycles. And they had the same insights in design thinking. They just didn't call it Agile, but it's very much the same concepts, the same principles, only they came from a different domain, which is in innovative product development, non-software.
That's right.
Lean Startup came with very similar insights, but they came from the Silicon Valley and the startup scene. And then we have lean manufacturing and agile software development. They all came from different domains, but there's huge overlap in the principles behind it. Why? Because it's common sense.
Common sense,
It's systems thinking. It's complexity science. It's all there. So who cares about the word agile? Not me. I care about it from a community perspective. I find myself being part of the Agile community. I love the people there, many friends that I like hanging out with. But if we all rename ourselves, I couldn't care less. And I think in the future, it's like it's the default. We stopped calling things cyber at some point. 10, 20 years ago, everything was cyber. There would be cyberspace and cyber this and cyber that. Well, we have cyber now, and nobody's calling it cyber anymore.
That's true. I forgot about that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm so old that I remember, Eric. We have cyberspace, and we don't call it cyberspace anymore. So I think we won't be calling things agile anymore. That's just the way things are done by smart people.
True. There will be a new label for something for sure. There's always somebody looking to create a list of payable certifications for sure.
There are always products, and some of those products will be certifications and workshops and whatnot. So there will always be models and frameworks and everything. And there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. But agile as a concept, that could disappear. Over time.
We'll call it nimble. How about that?
Nimble. Yes.
You heard it here first. Nimble software development. There we go. That's not true. Experience development. They need to update the.
I am in favor of renaming every product term to experience. So the experience backlog and the experience roadmap and the experience owner and the experience manager makes sense to me.
The experience owner makes a lot of sense, actually.
Mm-hmm.
We're not here to create code. We're not here to create a product. We're here to build an experience.
For our customers and users, yes.
There you go. There's a forecast for the future. It's all experience. Exactly. All right. Jurgen, we didn't even talk about a quarter of the stuff we wanted to talk about, but time is. I'll let you go. Prepare your dinner.
Dinner time over here for sure.
Once again, big thank you for participating on our friendly neighborhood podcast. It's truly appreciated. And maybe we'll get a chance to do this again in the future when you write your next book. I will not ask you what your next book is.
Good, because I won't tell you.
I say that because I asked that to a very well-known author a few years back at an Agile conference. He had just come up with his book, and he came and he sat down next to me, and I was a little bit intimidated. So I'll make small talk. So I asked a stupid question. So when's your next book? And he's like, dude, I just wrote a book. Give me a chance to breathe there.
Please buy and read this one. I know that. I know that as well.
But when it comes out, I'm sure, because you're really prolific. I know you read a lot and you want to transform these things into understandable concepts. And I'm pretty sure you'll write something else. And I'll take a chance and invite you again when your next book comes out.
I'd be happy to talk about it then. Awesome.
Jurgen, thank you very much.
Thank you too, Eric. It was a
pleasure.
Have a
good day. Bye.